this was a new physique you brought. I mean, you were a lot bigger than you were last year. So, you're working with it. I always say, like, the bigger you are, almost like the harder it is to get in condition. When I competed, I found it super easy to get in condition. I found it super easy to get lean and shredded and dry, but I never had to worry about getting full because I didn't really have a huge amount of muscle to fill out. Some of these guys, they have to fill out and dry out, and it seems like a much more of a science.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree, because this is the first year I really think that it was sort of hard for us to like really nail our peak. I mean, we were coming in like pretty decent conditioning, but I definitely noticed in previous years, it was very simple, very easy to peak, not much of a load and this and that. And then this year, it's we were trying to sort of figure out, it was like you said, it was a new physique and much more muscle. So like I put on almost like 10 pounds of muscle from Boston.
Do you know what? I'm glad you said that, because I've said before to guys, wow, you look 15 pounds heavier. And they go, well, actually it was 6. But it was well, do you know what I mean? So it did actually look, I would have said 10 to 14 pounds of muscle you look like you put on, because you're quite tall, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm 5'10", maybe a little bit over.
Yeah.
And a lot of these guys, you know what I mean? They might look taller like online, but then you stand next to them and you're like, wow, you're only like 5'8".
Yeah. So
no, but I would say the peaking process was just harder for us to figure out, and it was harder for me to get in shape. I would say that compared to previous years where it was a little bit easier. Like in past years, I was always pretty confident at 2 weeks out, like my glutes were already striated and stuff like that. Whereas this time it was sort of like all the way till the end, pushing hard, and I was doing double cardios. For New York, I think I was at 40 minutes twice a day. So that's,
wow.
80 minutes a day. So for me, that was a lot. You know what I mean?
Did you bump
from previous years? Yeah.
This year, obviously coming in bigger and heavier, did you bump up your food?
Food got lower than honestly in the past, I would say. So my carbs probably got to like 120.
Okay.
Towards the end.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Just do carbs pre and post workout. It wasn't for a long stretch, but like, so sometimes it's hard because when you explain that, sometimes people will think they may not have an idea of the time frame. But so for me, I would say like 3 to 4 weeks out is when it was that 120 carbs. The cardio was doubles, and then we would do like maybe every 4th day. It was never calculated, but it was due to check-ins and how everything was going, right? But we would do like a high day or something, but it was nothing crazy. It was like my high day would be like 400 grams of carbs. You know what I mean? So it wasn't like some of these guys are like, yeah, my high day is 1,000 grams of carbs. Like, no,
Nate,
it wasn't really like that.
Nate, I've been speaking to bodybuilders, Andrea Presti, and like that guy is an absolute carb machine. Like he says, my lowest carb day is like 400. I'm like,
that's crazy.
I mean, for like that. He said, and I'm struggling on that. I'm struggling.
Damn.
Yeah.
And then I was listening to Lewis Breed, who I met down here, and you interviewed. Great guy, really nice guy from your side. But they were saying like they were eating like a ton of food for Tampa too, like 3 days out, like even like they were carb loading hard, like 1,000 grams of carbs. Yeah. And he looked bang on. So, I mean,
I always wonder when you're like, I'm sure Lewis told me it was up to 1,500 gram of carbs the last couple of days. How do you not get this? How do you not get the stomach distension when you're eating quite that many carbs? I mean, I don't understand.
What would be my issue is I would probably get distended.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'd be able to handle that where some guys can. I mean, and that's the good thing about having a good coach is because sometimes you second guess yourself. You know what I mean? You're like, well, all these other guys are eating 1,000 grams of carbs. Maybe I should. You know what I mean? And it sounds obviously appealing because you're starving at that point, right? So it's easy to like talk yourself into being like, well, maybe I need more carbs, right?
Yeah. I can imagine though a guy your size on 120 gram of carbs pre and post training. I can imagine what that second cardio session's like.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it was definitely, this prep was really hard as far as like mentally, because honestly too, we were trying to make a nice splash, like it was, like I said, it was like my first like real season with the new muscle.
Yeah. And
we wanted to sort of make our mark a little bit. And, but I would say this, like for me, so I think the difference between those guys and me is like, I don't really get too flat. So I retain muscle pretty well. So even on those low days, I never was really looking at myself like, oh, I'm losing this body part, or I'm losing that body part, or whatever, you know. The only thing I will say is I run into is the inflammation in the legs from like the high cardio.
Right.
So like New York, I would say New York, my legs were a little bit washed out, and it wasn't really necessarily because of not being in condition, but I would say the inflammation I never really could get away until after New York. And then Vancouver, everything came together because I was able to pull back on the cardio, because like I said in the beginning about doing a second show, is like we were pretty much in pretty solid shape. So from that point forward, after New York, we were able to like pull back on the cardio, increase food a little bit. So it was a little bit better, and my body started to like get freshened up again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think for New York, I was not necessarily tired, but like I said, because my body looked really fresh, but like the legs were just not quite as separated, I would say, as they normally would be.
Would you say Vancouver was your favorite look of the season?
Yeah, definitely. I would say I was pretty much, pretty nailed. I mean, there were some small corrections that could be made, but it was more or less just due to environment. Like Vancouver, that show was so hot, and it was at like sort of like a high school, so it wasn't really like the best environment for a bodybuilding show, I would say. Like all of us were sweating like profusely, and I don't really usually sweat on stage, so that was something I had to deal with. And then also like at that show, I was the last one in the confirmation round to go, so literally right after that I had to go and or I was the last one to do my routine for prejudging.
Yeah.
So then right after that, I had to go right and pose with a call out, but it was like 6 guys, so there wasn't a call out. So it was literally like right back on stage to pose. So that was pretty tough. That I would say sometimes you take away notes from shows. That's a note I would take away. Same thing with anyone else like that might have a last name that starts with like a higher letter, towards alphabet. Sometimes that's sort of how they. So like my last name is Spear. So that means that's why I went last, because I got the last number.
Right, I see. Okay, okay, I'm with you now. Okay, I'm with you.
The best in the beginning, but so like for Tampa, Joel Thomas went last, and I saw he had to go through the same thing. You go out there, you do your individual for 60 seconds or however long, because in the pros they sort of let you go however, and then right after that, then you go right back into the first call out. You know what I mean? So it can be tough because, the guy that went, in the middle, he's just resting the whole time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's the same thing sometimes overall. Like sometimes you get the super and they bring the super right out after he just posed.
Yeah.
So you got to be prepared for that kind of stuff. So now I know that, in my mind, like, okay, that might happen again, on another show per se. So like the only thing I would say is from Vancouver, my look was like totally spot on, but it was tough because it was so hot at that venue. So like when I went back out there in my call out or whatever, I felt like my breathing could have been a slightly better because I was a little winded from that first initial individual routine for prejudging. If that makes sense. Sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't really explain it well.
So with Tampa, I know you didn't get the placing you wanted, but what did you do differently for Tampa like I said, you weren't happy with the placing, but were you happy with what you brought?
Yeah, overall, I think my look was pretty good. Like my glutes were striated, my chest was striated, like everything was like pretty much there as far as conditioning. Like I couldn't really, like I can't look back and say, oh, well, I could have lost more body fat. But I think my look was like maybe a little bit weathered or tired at that point. So I didn't really have as much pop maybe. But there's still a lot of great shots that I look at and I'm like, wow, I was really happy with the look. Like my ab and thigh that I posted was like pretty amazing, I thought, and like my most muscular. And I mean, my glutes were striated, but they could have been a little drier. Like there was maybe a slight film. So that's what a lot of people don't understand. Like it gets really hard at this level that I'm starting to become aware of, because at a national level, they would have been like, oh, that dude's peeled, like no question. But now at the pros, they're like, okay, you might have a little bit of film on you. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
More critical where I was.
Different level.
Yeah, for sure. So like your glutes may be striated, you might have your hamstrings dug out, but if you have that little bit of film, like people are gonna be critical of that, you know what I mean? Whereas, they want you like nice and dry and peaked perfectly, you know what I mean?